Their leadership has been one of the few that's been wise and smart about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now look, you don't have to defend the morality of the war. I think Victor has, I certainly have. The President of the United States has condemned the invasion. We don't like the war, we want it to stop. That's not the question. The question is, how do you make it stop? And the answer is not by politicians who stand at microphones and beat their chests and act tough when somebody else's children are going off to fight in a conflict. You do it through sustained diplomacy. And so I'd ask the people of Hungary, and not just Hungary, but the people all across Europe, what is the alternative to peace? Is it to continue feeding young men into this terrible, terrible war, to continue this completely ridiculous cycle of violence, or is it to get serious about diplomacy? Is it to continue to have skyrocketing energy prices to the point where European economies are on the verge of collapse, or is it to sit down and get serious about a peaceful resolution? The reason the President of the United States has been so dedicated about this is not because it affects us as personally as it does the people of Hungary or Europe. In fact, we're much more insulated, as all of you know, from what's going on in Russia and Ukraine than most countries anywhere else in the world. The President has asked us to work so diligently on it because he knows that it's bad. It's bad for commerce, it's bad for morality, it's bad for human life. We need to actually engage in some real diplomacy. Victor has been better at anybody at helping us understand what is it the Ukrainians need and what is it that the Russians need in order to achieve peace. We're going to keep on working on that process. As you've all heard the President say, this war has been the hardest of all the wars that he's worked on to solve, but we're going to keep on working at it. The President has ordered us to keep on working at it, but we need people. We need people in Europe who understand the stakes and understand how to get this negotiation done. Victor's been a great part of it, which is why the President asked him about the Budapest Summit, because I think we're ever going to get these leaders together, this is the perfect place to do it, a place of real statesmanship, a place that has shown itself very willing to be a positive force for peace.
Thank you very much. The second question goes to Patriota Noemi Német. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. I have one question to each of the participants. Mr. Orban, you have mentioned the serious energy crisis that we are facing. The ships that have been able to pass the Strait of Hormuz are just reaching Europe. Now that there is no oil coming from Russia or from Middle East, what do you think will happen with Europe, with Hungary? And what can the Hungarian-American Energy Cooperation mean for Hungary? And what do you think, will Brussels also lift the sanctions on the Russian energy?
If I may.
Please.
So, according to recent US intelligence reports, Ukraine may have interfered in the American elections, helping the Democrats. It has also come to light that the Ukrainian intelligence treats Hungary as an operational zone as well. What kind of political motivation could be behind Ukraine targeting conservative, patriotic political forces both in the United States and in Hungary? Thank you very much.
I think there is definitely a new situation in Europe, but the Hungarian elections are perhaps tightening our horizon, restricting our horizon. Therefore, we are not paying as much attention because of the elections to the developments. Of course, because we Hungarians are mainly preoccupied with the outcome of the elections next Sunday. However, there is something that is going to change everything that's happening. The thing is that the strategy that the Europeans have followed to support Ukrainians so far has ended, has failed. This strategy has failed. At the start already, it was an extremely strange idea to actually help the Ukrainians and try to bring about a situation where the protracted war puts Russia in such dire straits economically that in the end the Ukrainians, from the perspective of the Ukrainians and the Europeans who support them, the Russians will be forced to sit down with them in a weakened status that is preferable for the opposition. However, to wage an economic war against a country that has unlimited energy resources and has unlimited raw materials, while those waging the economic war do not have energy and do not have raw materials, was a very strange idea. And for some time, they might have believed that the sanctions levied on Russia in the end will be enough to actually win this economic war. But what is happening now is all of a sudden, everything has gained importance what the Russians dispose of. And suddenly they are in a much more favorable position than they used to be before, ever. So the Ukrainian, the support of Ukrainians' strategy has basically failed. But now we are concentrating on the elections. That's why perhaps less attention was paid to this. But we will be faced with an absolutely new situation after the Hungarian elections. The Hungarian situation is difficult. I do not want to make a secret of it, because it was first at the end of 2022 that the Ukrainians blockaded the gas pipeline that was bringing gas from Russia to Hungary. We managed to fend that off with the Turk Stream, but just now, not much before the elections, and I think because of the upcoming elections, and in the hope of having a pro-Ukrainian government elected into office, they actually blockaded our oil pipeline as well. The oil pipeline, that is the umbilical cord of the Hungarian economy, coming from Russia, the main supply route coming from Russia. Consequently, Hungary has had to tap into her reserves. There's two things we are doing. On the one hand, they have closed us off from oil. We have to supply the Hungarian economy, Hungarian consumers with fuel and with energy, and we have to force the Ukrainians to reopen the pipeline. And we have a plan to do that. We are actually executing that step by step. And at the end of this, I am convinced, after the national forces win the election here in Hungary, there will be no option left for the Ukrainians than to lift this blockade, to reopen the pipeline, and Hungary can just go back to normal operation. These are my, well, I wouldn't say hope, these are my plans. This is how it's going to happen.
So to answer your question, yes, we're certainly aware that there are elements within the Ukrainian intelligence services that tried to put their thumb on the scale of American elections, on Hungarian elections. This is just what they do. This is part of the cost of doing business within some elements of their system. I try to remind myself that Ukraine, like the United States, is a very complicated place. There are good people and there are bad people. There are people that try to interfere in others' elections, and there are people who actually just say, you know what, we believe in sovereignty for everybody, and that's what we support. For example, there were people in the Ukrainian system who were campaigning with Democrats literally in the weeks before the presidential election, where Donald Trump won very comfortably in November of 2024. So I'm aware of that stuff, but I don't think Victor lets that stuff get to him. I don't let that stuff get